What's up, everybody? Timber Builds back and grounded, doing a sandcastle base tour today. Realized streaming this last week that I hadn't really done a base tour of this sandcastle base. So if you haven't been following a lot of the live streams that I did, specifically around the sandbox when New Game Plus came out, you probably haven't seen all that much of this sandcastle. And honestly, it takes up the entire sandbox. We have every single inch of it covered in one way or another. It also is spilling out of the sandbox as well. It's been a really fun build, and I'll just kind of go through it, talk about what we've done, the different buildings, and some of the design ideas, and we'll just show some of this stuff off. The first base we are in is my sort of crafting personal base. Just a cool little castle, kind of designed off of the idea of like a library. I have a chest for every single individual item in the game. That is all the resources, bug parts. I have all the food items. I have all of the candies. Every single thing has its own chest in here. And then the rest of it's sort of designed just to look kind of interesting and cool, fill up the space. I originally thought I was going to need this entire space to have one of every item, and learned that there's not quite that many items in the game, but honestly, I think it turned out really cool. We also have a showcase showing off every single armor piece and set in the game here. Thought it was very fitting with the sort of library design, showing off all the items in their own space to also include the armors. And I always like doing a little armor showcase because honestly, they're pretty awesome. But this base ended up being very functional. The chests reach everything below. So this is just kind of a cool looking, fun space. And then the actual construction of everything happens down in this lower area. I have a similar little crafting centerpiece. Ended up using the mantis fountain. I have lots of grinders and spinners, ovens, all that stuff, and everything works really well. It actually laid out better than I originally thought it would. Nothing crazy. Have some scarecrows for feather production, as we use a lot of feathers on this base. So I was very glad when they added that. And then, as you'll see later, I have a little like market space that comes down here. We'll probably end on that side. And I'm going to stay in handy nap mode for a decent amount of things, just because you can get a better glimpse of everything, getting an above the ground view. And we'll run through some of the other parts as well. But typical construction, mushroom, bricks with ash cement, kind of keeping the evil fortress sort of look from the main tower that I made, which we'll look at soon. If you haven't seen that, this base was very fun to build. Staircase entrances, vertical. I was kind of messing with each building, kind of having its own design aesthetic. So some of these use a more angled triangle pieces sticking out, and this one was more about using like some vertical pieces. And I would say the vast majority of this first castle was built before the half blocks and quarter blocks were added to the game. So there was a lot more limitations building the actual towers here. And then things got exponentially better as they added some of those other items into the game. As you can see, this is my handy nat hole. Makes it real easy to get out of the base and go build everywhere. If you're curious, I do have a infused hammer with sizzle immunity, which is how I avoid getting sizzle here, but any place that has a shadow does allow you to avoid the sizzle. So as soon as you start building in the sandbox, it becomes a lot easier to avoid the issues that the sandbox has, and you can cover a lot of the ant lions so they don't bug you. I have a little bit more storage underneath here. I have all my jerky racks, pallets for weed stems and grass in here. Just kind of filled up the empty space that I had. This was kind of a large redesign of another sort of structure I had here that didn't quite work out the way I wanted, and that's kind of with some of the leftover spaces. There's a lot of randomness. This is all built directly over the sandcastle that's sort of like falling apart in the sandbox, and my goal was to sort of use the idea of rebuilding the sandcastle when I originally started. But very happy with how these things turned out. You can get underneath here, but these floors are all raised from the front here, which kind of allows you to, there's 2 antlions on each side that spawn, and by raising these floors up a level, actually allowed me to just cover them. So the vast majority of the time, they actually do not bug you at all, as you can probably hear them. They are underneath there, and fun little addition. This base, especially if you are not someone who's been in live streams and haven't seen a lot of this stuff, there's a lot of secret passageways. So here you can go into the little underground area. I think I just killed this antlion yesterday because he's bugging me. You can still get to the chests. There's one there. There's one that spawns here. There's a little path that goes around. I built out, this was going to be sort of a throne room. I was really hoping that the Ant Queen boss was going to get added right here, and they were going to take that rock out. That did not happen. But it's still a cool little spot underneath, and there you can see the antlions. I killed another one of those, but there's a chest that spawns there, and one you can still get to over there. And these are just kind of like the sewers of the city. I wanted, although this is a crazy base that takes up the entire sandbox, I did want you to be able to still go and get into the Black Ant Lab, get to these chests. There's like buried treasure and stuff that you can still would like to get to. There's some candies. And so I kind of created access to all those different spaces wherever I could. Then here we have the Wizard's Tower. This was a very fun build. There's a couple things that are sort of grandfathered on to this build, and that means these armoires that you can use. I have these set on a windowsill. This does not work quite as easy as it once did if you're looking to replicate this. Unfortunately, they changed some of the ways the walls work in the game at one point, and they don't quite sit on the windowsills as easily anymore. There's still some ways you can get around doing it. It's just more complicated now. Wizard's Tower was very fun. There is potentially going to be a video building this entire thing as like a speed build sort of thing. I just never got to editing it. But I do have a lot of footage of the building of it. So it's possible at some point, if people are interested, I might put that out if you like this space enough. And that'll kind of show you some of these things. There's also some tips and tricks videos on my YouTube talking about these specific things. Cool little spiral staircase. It's a little messy in here to get the exterior details to look the way I wanted. I could have built it slightly different, but I ended up liking the way this spiral staircase kind of worked out. I don't really like the acorn ones. They're not quite my favorite. They make me super dizzy, and this makes me slightly less dizzy. But this is where the wizards come, and they are trying to spawn in the crow, their god. Just having fun with story in here. Loved messing with the details. The wizards, the little brazier looks really fun and cool. Just a cool little spot. Love the little details, and it's just another little space that I think adds a lot of interesting detail to this city, as this is a massive city, and I wanted as many different buildings and structures as I could possibly make, with each one showing off different details and things that I found interesting and creative in the game, as I've now have, as the title says, 3,000 hours in this world. I think I spent 500 or so building the pagoda base, and the vast majority of the rest of it has been building this city, which is honestly getting kind of insane and out of hand. And the game is actually falling apart because this build is getting so big. It does not like me very much anymore, and I do often get random crashes here and there because we have so many pieces. As well, the base itself, or the city, there are some places that are incomplete. So we are going to be streaming those every once in a while, trying to finish off the rest of this city. There's a little bit of housing here, and over here, and otherwise just some of the finer details and stuff that I'm adding are the last things to go. So I'm hoping that we get a new update shortly. I have heard from the devs that there is another update coming out fixing some of the remaining bugs. Who knows what else that will come with, but I'm hoping that maybe when that comes out, we'll get back to streaming a bit more consistent with Grounded, because I do really want to finish off this entire city. It's just, I put too much effort into this whole thing to not finish the whole thing. So I definitely want to see it come to life. These towers are built over the towers that are actually like the sandcastle itself, as you can see here. That was sort of the layout or design of this entire thing, was just building over what the sandcastle already had and then kind of making it my own. The front entry turned out really cool. I love the styling that kind of like is mimicked and follows throughout the entire build. Creates a lot of cohesiveness in the design. The upper ramparts, at some point, we're going to have armor dummies and make it look like this place is totally kitted out and being guarded, similar to how these guys are placed. But the more items I place, the more issues I run into, so I'm keeping it to a minimum at the moment. But we will slowly add those details as we go. The next space is the main tower. This was the first piece of the entire build, was these kind of front entry walls, and then when you get up, the main tower itself. Super fun build. I built this in sort of 3 sections. The lower portion, the middle portion, and the upper portion all sort of built at sort of separate times. There is a build kind of video on this middle portion if you're interested in that. The rest of it is all fairly simple. I had a ton of fun with this upper area. There's a lot of details you'll never really see unless you're flying around with the handy nat like this. But a lot of fun details hidden inside of the wall itself. A lot of fun messing with the different triangle blocks. This is where I really started experimenting with Grounded's building and figuring out how to kind of create unique, interesting details that you might not otherwise be able to make. And this definitely went through many iterations where I changed details. I started with just a plain mushroom brick box, and it slowly transformed and turned into this kind of insane build. It was a lot of fun building this tower. There is some functionality in it. This is the main throne room. I definitely at one point wanted to kind of rebuild this, as this was all built before the quarter blocks and half vertical blocks were made. This was my sort of original base space before I went crazy on that first place we saw. But it ended up being a pretty cool little interior build. Not necessarily an insane amount of details through the rest of it, but we were doing some fun stuff when we were streaming a lot of this building. This place goes to this upper area with, I think this was a really cool, fun staircase build. I had a lot of fun building weird stairs that I hadn't really seen before in these spaces. And then once you get to the upper portion, the last part of the tower, this is our Hall of Presidents. If you're ever on streams, we have a president that is voted in by the community, and that person gets their own little space where they get to choose their weapon mount, some bug mounts and stuff, and then their armor and a pose for the armor dummy. So we have 2 of those up there and potential for more growth as we go. I love the idea of kind of involving the community in these builds a little bit so people can get their names in them. You'll see more of that a little later. I have a goofy little chandelier space up here. You can't really do anything at the very top, but it felt like it made sense to make the stairs go all the way to the top and just have fun with it since we were building this massive tower. Now we will head all the way back to the bottom. And if you see any weird cuts or anything, I may be jumping back and forth to make it day, as we have a lot to cover in this base, and so it might take us a day or two in game. So to make it so everyone can see, I will make sure it stays daytime. And some people have asked, I play this all in survival. I've collected all the materials up until the 1.2 update. I played this fully vanilla, no handy nat. After the handy nat was added to the game, or was an addition they made, I ended up making a custom game. So I lost achievements, but gave me the ability for the handy nat, which has been game changing to be able to build this kind of stuff. Still collected all the materials, and as of the last couple months, right around the fully yoked update, I ended up updating and changing some of my settings to allow me to collect a little bit faster. So the resource respawn rates have been turned up to 5, which really just makes lint and ash cement or everchar charcoal respawn every day instead of every 5 days, which makes a huge difference. And then I turned hunger and thirst off because I got tired of endlessly beating aphids with a salty weapon to get more food. I have a little pathway. You'll see a lot of stuff like this as I was just running around. Pathway that goes down and around. This goes to the secret treasure area and comes back underneath that marketplace. Just lots of different pathways and stuff that we have to kind of traverse and get around this map, which I had a lot of fun kind of adding in and designing. This is our kind of Great Hall build. Fun little staircase that comes down, was messing with vegetation and stuff, and this build was sort of the idea from a subscriber of the channel giving me the idea of this little detail. He just showed me a wall piece with some mushrooms on the side and how you can kind of set these together by using the triangular blocks, and then I just kind of went insane with that one idea and created this fun little Great Hall. Kind of started as a church. It's been reworked a couple times. Built some of this on stream, some of it off, but it ended up being a really fun little build, sort of designed off of just replicating this one section over and over and then filling this space, and then it sort of like cascaded into this Great Hall cathedral build. All these fun window details. The interiors of a lot of these spaces aren't necessarily detailed out yet. Some are very detailed. Some like this are empty because I'm hitting the item limits and I want to finish the exteriors of everything before we start placing millions of items and actually break the game. But the hope is that eventually we break the game. And then messing with the idea of creating some flying torches to sort of give the Harry Potter Great Hall vibe, with the floating candles, and then there would be great tables going all throughout. The detailing on this build was probably one of my favorites at the time. I think it turned out really cool. There's a lot of ins and outs and depth. There's fun materials. There's fun roof designs. It was a very cool build to do, although it took a handful of iterations. And then, as every Great Hall has, you have your Hall of Heroes, or your crypt. This is where all of my fallen pets have gone. Yes, I did have to capture all of these pets and kill each one of them. I felt horrible. It was not a good day, but it ended up creating an awesome effect. And then these are my actual 3 pets that randomly died in the game, so I gave them a special spot. And the rest are just ones we did specifically for the aesthetics, you know. Then you can either come out below here, or you can come from up top here and get around. This is just sort of a little place to go over this little moat and get you out and about. We haven't necessarily finished all the details in these buildings right around here, but sort of just small little plaza spaces. And then this is going to be a housing district that I will hope to finish off sometime on stream. I am very hopeful that we get this next update in the next month or so maybe, which should fix a lot of the bug issues and things going on. And I would love to hop back into the game at that point and finish this thing off, because it needs to be done at this point. and there's really not that much. The houses come together pretty quick, as you'll see on the other side. We built a lot of them in just a day or so. Then we have our telescope or observation tower. This was a very fun build. Someone made a really, really cool playgrounds build where you can build off-grid, and they did a lot of more interesting designs, and I kind of took that design and turned it into my own little vanilla style build, so someone could maybe rebuild it and recreate it in a way that they don't have to use playgrounds or custom game settings and stuff. So this is all vanilla again, as everything else is, but fun little statue room here underneath. Little staircase that gets you up to the first small tower and then gets you to the exterior of everything. The first plans were to build this sort of path all the way around the entire sandbox on the outside here, and then the walls would come down and around. We will not have the item limit ability. We will hit the item limit far before we got that done, so I kind of gave up on that. It was a little too big a scope to be able to do, even with a very nice computer. It still kind of hits the limitations of what anyone's game can handle. We have our telescope here, fun little design, not necessarily meant to work perfectly, but it gives the representation of a telescope and a kind of observatory or outpost sort of thing. And it was another fun little build, lots of fun little details here, fun ideas. Pay very close attention to some of these builds that I'm showing off. There's a lot of small details that are very, very easy to miss. That are a lot of fun, and you probably take into your own designs and builds and kind of mess with. I think that was my favorite part of doing this stuff live, is getting the input of the subscribers and the community on different design ideas, talking through the different designs, what was working, what wasn't, and just getting other people's input. It makes it very fun to build as a community and help inspire other people, and other people that watch kind of help inspire me as well. As you can see here, this is our subscribers temple. Very fun build. I had a great time building this. This is one of our more insane. There's a couple buildings here that I think turned out pretty incredibly ridiculous. This is definitely one of them. Every single pillar here uses, I think it was like 18, 6. So like 28 or so ash cement on top of, or 24, whatever it is. And then there are lights placed within these columns. Massive amounts of ash cement were used to make this build, but I think these columns turned out really cool. These are some of the half-corner mushroom stairs, and you turn them in on themselves. You don't have to infill this stuff necessarily, but I think it did look cool, added some different elements. You can also see them in like a full mushroom style. And then, as always, random little things like this to get you to different areas in the world. I liked connecting everything possible. This build, the flooring is mushroom pillars and ash quarter walls. So every single one of these things has 4 ash cement quarter walls, it's an insane amount of ash cement. And you wonder why our world is crashing. We push it to the absolute max wherever we could. Had a lot of fun creating some of these details, making stuff look floating, the kind of fun wrapped around lighting effects. A lot of this stuff is from like people in the community giving me ideas from some of their builds and vice versa. The ceiling, funny enough, Ludorev has a base tour, amazing builder that's been on the channel a couple times. He had the idea of using, at the same exact time, I was using these blueprints of the Firefly hanging lanterns. He was using the Firefly hanging lanterns within these little triangle pieces, and I ended up copying half of his idea and adding the firefly hanging lanterns on top of the blueprinted versions, because I liked that the blueprints look like kind of light bulbs, but they don't actually emit light when they're a blueprint. So when it becomes nighttime, the roof all kind of glows one color, which looks really cool, and it adds a great effect to all the random like glowing light in here. This is also built specifically, everyone who's subscribed to the channel gets their own chest. So some of the main subs and my mods, people who've donated to the channel consistently and stuff, are shown here. Great place for people, but I wanted to give specifically an entire build specifically just to show that off, or show them up in their, or show them off in their support. So it was a very fun build, definitely overcomplicated, but it ended up being pretty crazy awesome, and I'm very happy with how this one turned out. It's a fun little way to do some cool details, test out some fun lighting and stuff, and as always, push the limits of building in this game wherever we can. The next one, this is from a build sort of mimicked from Game of Thrones. A lot of this city originally started as sort of a mimic, or I used King's Landing from Game of Thrones as a precedent to give me sort of ideas for what buildings to build. So there was kind of a big tower, another side tower, they had a cathedral sort of thing, and then there's just some random buildings within the Game of Thrones universe that I used for some inspiration for some different builds. This specifically, not part of King's Landing, but is the House of the Many-Faced God. I really wanted to show off some armor pieces and make a fun build right here, and had the idea to create a building based off of that. If you don't know much about the Many-Faced God, kind of a horrifying idea, but they keep the faces of people and they can make themselves change to that person's appearance by using their faces, and that is what we are mimicking here with every single bug mount head that is multiplied by 18 of each. So every single bug head here has 18 of that exact type, because there's so many. It was like over 1,000 heads or something like that. And it's probably why part of this world is crashing, because we do stuff like this. I also haven't even finished all the armor sets, but there's going to be 8 of each armor set in these pillars that go up, or the columns, which was also a little fun addition. So not necessarily totally complete. We have to do some of the final details, but very happy with how this base turned out. It was a lot of fun to make. There's also some access to underneath down here, just in case you needed to get anything. There's some food resources and stuff down there that are nice to access still. The outside was really fun. Kind of has some interesting window details on top of the roof and stuff being a cool thing. The House of the Many-Faced God, or the House of Black and White, sort of has this yin and yang feel to it, which is why there are ash cement details and mushroom details. Sort of the inspiration of that. So you get half that's the ash cement, half that's the mushroom, and they're sort of inverted on each side, which I think worked very well. Quite happy with how that turned out. And you can see the opposite entrance does the opposite of that. So kind of flip things. It was a fun kind of exercise in doing goofy little details, messing with some of the different decor items, columns, quarter blocks, all of that stuff. But I think it turned out pretty cool, and I did have a lot of fun building this one. And again, this is all built live on stream, so you can check out the VODs. Those were a great time. We were busting through these builds pretty quick. We now have this area, which my most recent stream goes over this new sort of water garden space. It was a very fun, quick little build. We built this whole thing in one night. I had some of the ideas done already and in my head. It's not totally finished yet. There's still some more fun details. We got to get the mushrooms growing properly, but just kind of creates a fun little garden space. trying to figure out how to add more greenery here and fill up this kind of central area that was just kind of open and I left to the very end. So you got a little kind of pergola or pagoda space sort of thing here to hang out in, and it was a fun little quick build to do on stream. And I love being able in Grounded to just do kind of one quick build per stream, get one building done, and have some great little effects from it. It's very fast paced when you get good at the building in this game because of the blueprinting system. And then my favorite build, favorite build I've ever done in Grounded. Ooh, we kill this guy? I think we should. There are, as you could see, a few antlions that still spawn up on top of these bases, but the vast majority of them do spawn underneath, and if you mess with it enough, it's really not that hard to get them covered up, and they'll leave you alone for good. But back to my favorite build so far. This is based off of the Sept of Baylor from King's Landing. If you're a Game of Thrones fan like I am, I kind of took an idea of this octagon, sort of hexagon shape or whatever it is, of the Sept of Baylor. If you look up those images, and I can show some of those off as well, potentially, some of my inspirations in the little montages that you'll see before each building. This build was kind of right when I first started streaming, and honestly is still to this day one of my favorite things I've ever built. Everything came together. It was a very slow process. This probably took me 3-4 weeks maybe to get fully built out and detailed. The towers around the outsides, figuring out how to make that all work, getting it raised up so the antlions don't spawn within it. The lighting effects, this is right after they added the quarter triangles, and I was just going crazy with those details. Definitely keep an eye out. You can miss a lot of fun little details. The ladders in the windows, just tons. This one was about just pushing the limits of the building past anything I had done, and it ended up being so much fun to build. And we haven't even gotten to some of the cooler stuff. The ceiling or the roof here ended up being really cool. I wanted to create a dome, but naturally you cannot create domes in Grounded, so this was sort of my compromise in creating a cool roof structure. This changed 20 times probably before I ended up getting it right by the end and ended up being what I liked. There's stairways or stairwells, whatever you want to call them, going around the outside to get you to each different area. And then the inside is probably the piece de resistance. It turned out so cool, all based off of I wanted to create a Termite King organ space and kind of create like this shrine in the middle. And then just the details exploded. The gradient of light, these go from white and then slowly transition to each color, which was a very fun detail. Not a fun detail to build. Getting all of these lights in there was an absolute pain, and they got rid of my ghost mode for the handy nat at that point in time, so I wasn't able to clip through anymore. So that was a bummer. But all the lights reflect around on each side, so each wall mimics the light on the floor. There's some fun details with some armor dummies in these windows showing off the Ant Queen armors, as they were sort of dedicated to this area, is the Queen's area. And then we have this massive chandelier up top that is still to this day one of my favorite things. I just love like how RGB perfect this turned out. It kind of reminds me of like a kaleidoscope. If you can get it set up right and spin around. It ended up just being perfect. Like the lighting all lined up amazingly well. This took an insane amount of time to get all these lights perfectly done. But a sub on the channel challenged me to build a crazy chandelier here, and I think we accomplished the mission. I think it was a fun one to build. There's also some pieces that are not completed here, where you can take stairs right there and go up these little stairwells to get to the upper level that just has sort of a balcony space, and on the front and back there's balconies on the sides as well. And then there's also some entrances which we haven't totally finished yet, but down here the Sept of Baylor, if you're not a Game of Thrones fan, gets blown up by some crazy alchemists with the idea of using some fire. And there's these perfect little spiky burr bombs in the game. And so my goal would be to build this out eventually into hallways or sort of a dungeon space completely filled with bombs. If the game allows us to and doesn't crash. Before we do that, the goal is to then blow the base up for a video to see what happens. So if we get to that point, that is sort of the goal. And just thought it would be a very fitting thing to see what happens, but I'm not sure if we're going to be able to place enough items or not yet to be able to do that. And now it's day. Perfect. And so some other interesting things about this build as a whole, the vast majority of this is built on the same grid, but if you're curious, some of these angles are built kind of funny. So the main base is all based off of the same grid that this front wall is built on. That is all of this stuff, all of this, that, all the floor here, the Sept of Baylor thing, all of the housing, and this stuff down here. The things that are maybe on a slightly different angle, if you're thinking of this as straight, then this wall, the wall that goes around the entire pagoda base, that is all built on its own grid. So that means that some of the builds over here and this build and then the temple are actually attached to this wall. And so they are built on a slightly different grid, which very easy to do if you just build a grid and then start building. You kind of just find these spaces where like stairs like this kind of clip together. You get some of these random spaces where like this wall is you can sort of see that this wall is slightly different than the other one. It ended up being very close, but that is how the temple and a base we'll see later, our bathhouse and marketplace and pot palace are all built on a slightly different grid. And that's how you get some of the more interesting designs throughout the city. Then we'll hit up the first area. We're going to get attacked by this antlion, so I got to be quick. The one that's underneath there still gets us. Just built a little housing space in here, sort of a cool little church design. That ended up being really cool. Trying to kind of make the smaller size buildings. We built all the massive stuff and then kind of are just infilling at this point with the different cities or houses in the cities as we go, and just sort of infilling the extra space with these kind of finer details. None of these houses have anything in them yet, as I mentioned earlier. But I do think all the little designs, if you are interested in building little houses and stuff, I think there's some fun little details here that people can pick from these as well for just some of the smaller stuff. You can still get down here to the black ant lab. This also stops most of the black ants from crawling all over the city and aggroing all of the ant lions that can't be kept underneath, which is a positive detail. But there are a few, and sometimes if you get an infused antlion, your life is over.
Game over.
I had to reload a save at one point because there's a glitch where if an infused antlion has the spicy and sour infusions, and they hit a base item, it multiplies hundreds and hundreds of the infusions. It actually crashed my game, sent it to the developers, and they just kind of laughed and said, that is the craziest thing we've ever seen. We're going to look into that one for you. So it blew up about half of this base at one point, which I thought was pretty funny. But the housing district coming together very well. Quite happy with how these little houses turned out and sort of the differences in materials and just filling these spaces. As you can see, some of these houses are built on, again, the wall. So it's a slightly different grid here, whereas like this is built on the main grid, as well as a lot of these houses. And then like this big house specifically is meant to cover the eye of the big Lego sand toy, where there is, in New Game Plus at least, a Black Widow and a Wolf Spider. So they're both trapped within this space, which you can very easily do just by building a wall over the place they can get out, and they'll be trapped forever. So there's a lot of little secrets you can do to trap the bugs in places you don't want them to get to you in. So it definitely has made life a lot easier not having a Wolf Spider walk around at night. And then the Black Widow is horrifying, and you can hear them most of the time as well. Then we did the barricades, which ended up being a very fun build. Start down in the bug barn. This is where all the bug mounts go for the defenders of the city. You can kind of get up. This is all their space. The idea being there's some pallets and storage down here as well. Fun little space. And then it actually is sort of, the idea was a fireman's or a fire station, where some of these things don't quite work yet. You would start up in the central area, which is the main barricade, so where the City Watch would stay, and then you can come over. This would be filled with like archery stations and some of those bigger details, places for training. The living quarters are what these two are. You can come up and get in over here. Slightly funky builds, but they were kind of fun, being a little quirky and different than my usual perfection mentality. Some little loft spaces for maybe like the generals or the captains or whatever to stay, and then some lower spaces for like storage and stuff. Had a lot of fun with these little vertical windows and the walls that go around. There also would be an armory station in here where you can go get your armor, and like if there was an emergency, everyone would run in here, grab their armor and stuff. Of course, not totally finished yet, but the plan was we were getting there. And then again, this was our fireman's pole where you drop down into the little bug barn area I was just in when we started. And that gives you your way to get up and around in there. Then we also, as every City Watch would have, is the jail. And so anyone who does anything wrong, funnily enough, this ends up getting you to the little lab station area that is in the sandbox. Sandbox outpost. Not that it's super critical, but I really liked tying these small details into the build. And it just worked out that it also is where you get to come in and see the jail. And so you got all the individual jail cells. Fairly simple build, but felt like something that was needed. Some of the details. Antlion's angry. We're going to have like a little bench. I was going to put telepodies in here and make a little bathroom, and that was your sad little existence if you break the law in this city. And then a bunch of doors so no one could escape. Let's take the fireman station pole out. You can drop down in these areas to get out as well, but I liked my little fireman's pole hole thing. And then as you can see, there's two antlions. I'm going to avoid those because I don't really want to get attacked at this exact moment. Outside of the barracks, just a fun little kind of central plaza area. The idea was that if we get to it, build these out as maybe amphitheaters or something. You have a little dock down here to get into the sewage, moat, whatever you want to call it, area. Because if you fall down, it's nice to get out. There's another one. This is where the secret pathway ends up. Run away. Don't attack me. Ouch. So you can get there. Again, the marketplace will come up to last. And then let's go to this side so we avoid these guys. Those two antlions are probably the most annoying ones thus far. The rest of them leave you alone for the most part, so they're not as bad. You come around the housing district here. You get what I love. This is probably my second favorite build of the entire sandbox. Because it takes the natural sort of oasis and turns it into a bathhouse. Very fun build. The details turned out really cool. There's an amazing builder that sort of built this sort of detail out for a totally different style of build. And I sort of replicated it in my own way, added my own details, and created this fun little wall detail. I think we're going to get attacked by that guy in a second. Little stinkers. But yeah, it utilizes these garden beds, which I'm really happy with how those turned out. Again, this build is built off of the grid of the wall that goes around the base, so it is slightly different. That's how you get these fun little weird details that work out like this. And once we get inside, you'll see sort of the grand effect of the whole thing. But the bathhouse is a very fun build. I think we'll go up. This is my side passageway that just kind of worked out perfectly. Brings you in to the base itself. There's a little staircase to bring you down as well. And up to this upper balcony level. This build definitely competes with the cathedral build in terms of my favorite details I've made. Lots of just little details. The build was on a much smaller scale than the cathedral, but I think we accomplished a lot of fun stuff on this one. It does also connect over here. As you can see, those staircases where we're out in this little plaza. You can also get on the roof, which we never really fully detailed out. But I loved having multiple entrances, multiple pathways, different areas to get into all these different builds. And then we have just our little fireplace, cozy area, messing with some of those designs. Lots of weird, unique little details in the walls to show things off. The chandelier skylights ended up turning out really, really well. I really like how those are. The ceiling detail, kind of creating a more organic build here is what the goal was. So inlaying, lots of light, inlaying the weed stems as well, really kind of helped create an interesting aesthetic here. They do create some funny details that I don't necessarily know if they're intended, but this larger outer curved wall ended up being a really cool build piece to mess with here. Although none of this is absolutely perfect because we did some crazy weird designs I don't think they necessarily intended the pieces to be used for. So you get some weird gaps here and there, but I think the effect overall is exactly what I was going for. You get this bathhouse oasis specifically built to show off the hot tubs, and you can come sit in hot tubs and hang out in your perfect little garden oasis, and it's got this plant life. I thought it was a very fun, cool build, and I did have a ton of fun building this one. There's grass pieces, lots of cool lighting effects here hidden within the walls that were a lot of fun to build. As you see, the hose comes down and is what's creating the oasis, but it felt like a very fitting build to do a bathhouse space for. And then we can come out here. Sorry for the raw science thing. Some of the things got stuck in the walls, so I don't feel like tearing things down to get the raw science. And then, although you can go to this balcony, you can go to these outer spaces. Like I had said, I like the idea of connecting everything possible. So I made a little elevator tower here that bounces you up to the top. Takes you up to the outer wall here, but it also takes you to the Pot Palace. Pot Palace was a very fun build. An amazing builder on the grounded Discord built a cool build here, and I was like, I got to do my own version of that. So I used my own column design that I had messed with over at the temple that isn't even rendered in because it's so far away at this point. But kind of continuing the use of the grass and the garden boxes and stuff, or planter boxes, finding a way to utilize this potted plant and these different potted plants to kind of continue the vibes from the bathhouse, and created a cool little kind of garden space. So we call it the Pot Palace because it's a palace in a pot. Nothing crazy there, but it definitely turned out really cool. Used some of the roof techniques from the cathedral on this one. Had some more fun with some of the different designs, messing with those little things. Really liked the floor that worked out here. Same design from the temple, just with stem quarter walls instead of ash cement, and gives a very, very different feel. But again, utilizing the same kind of fun roof textures and blocks to kind of create some interesting details. And at night, this stuff looks honestly incredible. I had a lot of fun doing it, and it looks very cool. And then lighting up the plants underneath as well to create a cool kind of effect on top of that. And then the last area of the base, which still has a ton of work to be done, is the marketplace. Marketplace is just sort of this colonnade or archway, kind of created to make an open marketplace was the main idea here. Each one of these individual spaces would be a stall for vendors. We have some of them mocked up here, selling pots or maybe like statues, little decor, lights, whatever it may be, putting all the items. But again, we're getting so close to the limitations of items in the game that I can place where the game runs out of memory. I didn't want to go too crazy and not be able to finish the housing districts before I got into all the minor details. So hopefully we can get to a point where we actually get these built out. But the colonnades here turned out absolutely awesome. These are all built on stream as well, live. This was a very, very fun build. I love the way the sort of fence pieces, the sprig hand railings that are here, then have lights on them. The idea being sort of like those flag, like lines of flags you'd see in some marketplaces hanging from the rafters and just creating this extra effect. And then it kind of worked out perfectly that they lit up, and they just created a fun little detail because we needed some good lighting in here as well. So that was all a great time. They turned out really cool. You can, from the other side where we are on the Pot Palace, you can get up on top and walk all the way through and down and around this stuff. There's sort of a boardwalk or upper walkway on top of it so you can see the whole world, which I think was a very fun little effect. I love just the up and downs and all the random places you can kind of get into because of the way these things connect. That was a big kind of driving point for me, was how to connect things back to the other pieces. So there was just everywhere you looked and went, you would kind of find magical little places that you would never expect, making the city much larger. And it's already a big build as it is, but it created some fun little spaces where we can hide fun details. And that's where things really start to come to life for me, is when you add in those different connections and stuff. This goes all the way back around to a stairway that just gets you back to the main crafting base. Or you can also just come down and around here. If you fall in the water, in the moat, you can just take a staircase back up there. And this goes all the way back around to where we started. And I hope everybody enjoyed this little base tour. I know this is a massive base. It's not really a little base tour by any means, but I had an absolute blast building this, and I know it's not quite done. If you're interested in seeing this base continued and see me build this, definitely leave a comment. If you want to see more grounded live streams, I definitely hope to get back into the backyard here soon, but I would really love to have the new update come out where they fix some of the bugs and issues going on. There's also a few interesting mods that people have made, making New Game Plus a little bit more enjoyable, a little less grindy. So I'm tempted to potentially add those to the game, so we can maybe have a bit more fun and test out some different builds and items that are made to make the game a little bit more enjoyable. I'm in New Game Plus like 7 now, if I'm not mistaken, or New Game Plus 6, and we're at almost 2,500 days in game, 3,000 hours. Most of it spent building this and just rushing through the stories and stuff and collecting lots of materials, since I did collect all the materials in here. But if you want to see this stuff live, make sure to leave a comment. Let me know what your favorite part of the base is, and I hope to catch you in a live stream when we're building this stuff and finishing it all out. So I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.